Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel that takes you deep inside the San Francisco 49ers. I am your host, Jack Hammer. Today, we're going to take a look at the 49ers roster. They're right around the corner from training camp starting. First day of practice is going to be coming up on July 26th. The team reporting to Santa Clara. All the veterans will be there on the 25th of July. Now, let's go ahead, let's take a look at how I think this roster is going to shake out. You know, there's been a lot of discussion around the 49ers and the quarterback position, so let's start there. I think the 49ers are going to carry three quarterbacks. There's been some discussion as to whether or not Trey Lance or Sam Darnold will be traded. When I look at this prediction, I don't think that either one of them. I think you're going to see Brock Purdy. I think you're going to see Trey Lance. I think you're going to see Sam Darnold. And that's going to be the top three quarterbacks that are going to make the 49ers roster. I just don't see Brandon Allen being on the roster once training camp breaks and the team has to cut down to 53. The only way Brandon Allen is a member of this 53-man roster is if either Trey Lance or Sam Darnold ends up getting traded, or potentially even Brock Purdy, depending on his health, if he's able to be active week one as he makes that comeback from the torn UCL. You know, you look at it, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, they've dubbed Brock Purdy as a leader in the clubhouse. They did that during the owners' meetings. At the same time, a little bit later, you had Kyle Shanahan coming out, leaving that door open, saying that nothing's set in stone. That came out during the owners' meetings as well. So it's all up for grabs right here. Brock Purdy, leader in the clubhouse, Trey Lance, right there to push him to try to finally get a hold of that starting job that should have been his from the moment he got drafted in 2021. This is where he was supposed to be in terms of competing and being the 49ers starting quarterback. And you also have Sam Darnold, who is now working his way into the mix. Best situation he's been in his career. But I look at this, Purdy, Lance, Darnold, if I was to make a prediction today who the starting quarterback is going to be week one for the 49ers out in Pittsburgh, I would go with Brock Purdy, just based off of what he did last year and during the regular season and how he performed in those games. If he is fully healthy, both physically and mentally, I think it's going to be very hard for Trey Lance to get past him. But crazier things have happened, and I wouldn't put it past Lance to be able to get past Purdy, just from the standpoint that Lance has tons of potential. If he finally starts to fulfill that this year in training camp, and if Brock Purdy misses a little bit of time in the beginning, that could give Lance that runway to take the number one job for the 49ers. So there you have it, the quarterbacks, three of them, Purdy, Lance, and Darnold. Let's move on to the running backs now. This is an easy one to start off with. Christian McCaffrey, we all know that he's going to make the roster. He's undoubtedly the number one player on the 49ers when it comes to the running backs, probably the most important player on the roster overall as well. And then you get to the backs behind him. Who's going to be number two? I think the number two back for the 49ers is going to come down to Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason. Here's the thing. We know that Elijah Mitchell's been a really good back when he's been healthy. But there's the big thing. When he's been healthy, Elijah Mitchell, over the first 2 years of his career as a 49er, has played in just 16 out of a possible 34 regular season games. So that opens the door for Jordan Mason to step in, the undrafted free agent, who last year as a rookie was able to step into that lineup when Mitchell was out and earn the role of that closer, where he can come in late in games when the team needs to run the ball, needs a guy that they know they can feel comfortable with, isn't going to turn it over. And Jordan Mason looked really good in that position last season. And then on top of that, Mason, during OTAs and minicamp this year, looking really good with his hands, not dropping any of the targets that came his way in the passing game. Pass protection is pretty good as well. So I think it's going to be a really tight battle. Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason for that number two back. But Mason, I think, might be able to edge him out if he's able to do everything that we've seen him do so far. I think the health difference gives him that edge. And then last but not least, Ty Davis-Price. I have him making the roster. He was drafted by the 49ers last year in the third round. I think he's going to be competing with undrafted rookie free agents Kalen LeBourne and Ronald Awatt to make this roster. I do think the 49ers carry four running backs in their backfield: McCaffrey, Mitchell, Mason, and I do think Ty Davis-Price makes the squad, being able to beat out Kalen LeBourne and Ronald Awatt, although he might not be active very often during games. We'll see how that all plays out. And then you go to fullback, you have Kyle Juszczyk. That's a no-brainer. Juszczyk, one of the best fullbacks in the game. One of the things that's really cool about him is his versatility, which allows the 49ers to utilize him as a fullback. He can kind of be a move tight end at times. So they're in 21 personnel, but the formations that they're in look like something that you'd be using if you were in 12 personnel, a two tight end set. He's just so versatile in that way, Kyle Juszczyk is. So there's your four running backs: McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, Ty Davis Price, and then you also have Kyle Juszczyk there at the fullback spot. Remember, you also have the jackhammer also in there as well, but he's likely not going to make the 53-man roster. Jack Coletto, the fullback out of Oregon State, I would expect if he's going to be able to stay around with the 49ers this year, you'll see Jack Coletto possibly on the practice squad if he gets that far with the team, if he's able to impress. So there you have it. Those are your first 8 players on the roster. Now we slide over to the wide receivers. I think the 49ers are going to take 6 wide receivers making the roster here for the 49ers, starting off with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jauan Jennings, Ray McCloud. I don't think there's anything off that's going to be happening there. I think those 4 are pretty much set in stone. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, your top 2 wide receivers, really a wide receiver 1A and 1B. And then you have Jauan Jennings, who's your third down back, wide receiver, comes in really good out of the slot, picks up those third downs like crazy. Yeah, he struggled a little bit during the offseason program with drops. That's not unusual for Jauan Jennings. He typically struggles in practice with those types of things at times. Usually in the games he steps forward. And this is going to be his last year in San Francisco, I believe, anyway. And the 49ers are going to want to get the most out of him that they can while they have him. Next up, Ray McCloud showed off last year at times, especially when Deebo Samuel was out of the lineup. He showed that ability to be a factor in the run game. Remember his long touchdown run against Washington proved to be a factor in the passing game at times as well. I think those are your 4 you're set. Samuel, Ayuk, Jennings, McCloud. Those 4 are set. The last 2 for the wide receiver room is going to be Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell. You know, you look at this one, and I think Danny Gray and Bell, they're going to be competing with guys like Tay Martin, and then veterans Chris Conley, Willie Snead IV for the final 2 roster spots. But I do think that Gray, because of where he was drafted, and Bell, a draft pick this year, I think they make the roster over those other guys. You know, Gray brings speed. The 49ers like that speed that he brings. If he can show some toughness with his run blocking this offseason, that's going to help him get more snaps during the regular season than he saw as a rookie. And then with Ronnie Bell, the nice piece about him, which you like there, is he's shows the ability to fight for the ball, and he's not afraid to go over the middle. That's one of the things that I noticed with him during the offseason program. Almost everything that he was catching was across the middle, and he wasn't afraid to catch the ball in traffic. So that's why he gets in there. And I think that Martin and Snead will end up being on the practice squad. Remember, one of the things here, if you're on the practice squad, that doesn't mean you're not going to be able to play in games, because you can bring these guys up and down. They did that last year with Willie Snead. I think they will do something like that again this year, where they can utilize him at times, elevate him onto the active roster, primarily for his special teams ability and those types of things. So I think we'll see both of those players on the practice squad. That is Tay Martin, Willie Snead. So there you have it, wide receivers: Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jauan Jennings, Ray McCloud, top 4, Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell making the roster. And let's slide over to tight end. This one is a little bit more iffy in that you have George Kittle. You know you're set there. I have the 49ers taking 4 tight ends. Now, that's what they have a tendency to go right in between 4 and 3. Last year they had just 3. So we'll see what they decide to do this year when it comes time to break that down. But I really like what you see in Cameron Latu and Braden Willis. I think they were both drafted to take the place of the backups behind George Kittle. I think Latu was drafted to be that inline blocking tight end to replace Charlie Warner, be better with his hands when the opportunity arises, because that's one thing that Warner really struggled with in 2022. Meanwhile, you have Willis, who is more of that move tight end type of a player, like a Ross Dwelley. Not going to be in your inline blocker. He's not going to push people around in the run game, things like that. But he's going to be able to make plays. He's going to be able to does a good job if he's off the ball in the run game. But he also has that ability to get out in the passing game and make some plays there. So I think that's where he fits in. I have Ross Dwelley also making the team. Dwelley, I have him making the team primarily due to his play on special teams. This is one of those things where every year we're talking about Ross Dwelley being cut. Every year he makes the team because of his ability to play on special teams and his ability to fit in on the offense when they need him in a pinch. In some ways, he's been their backup fullback in a way as well. I think that's a little bit more going to be geared towards Braden Willis. They're hoping this year. So we'll see, but I do have Dwelley for now making the roster. However, if the 49ers decide that they're going to keep an extra player somewhere else and they're going to go with only 3 tight ends, I would think that it's going to be Ross Dwelley that's going to be the odd man out. We'll see how that plays out. But your 4 tight ends, again, George Kittle, Cam Latu, Braden Willis, and Ross Dwelley. And then let's wrap up the offense. We talked just recently on this channel about the offensive line, and I feel like this group has been underrated by some 49er fans. I think the 49ers offensive line is really one of the strengths of this team, especially Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, Spencer Burford. Those four started for the 49ers last year, played really well, especially Banks, Brendel, and Burford as first-year starters. Not rookies for all of them, but first-year starters. They all played very well, and you would expect them to be able to have a little bit of an increase in their ability as they go into year two. Trent Williams, you know what you're getting out there out of the all-pro left tackle. That brings us to Colton McKivitz. I think he's going to be your starting right tackle. All signs point in that direction. He might be it might take a little bit of time for him to catch up with where Mike McGlinchey is, but I don't think it's going to take long. I think in the passing game, you're going to see that McKivitz is able to hold up just as well there, and might even be better in the run game. So at the offensive line, that starting group 5 for the 49ers, I think it is as solid as any in the NFL. That brings us to the backups. You've got a couple of veterans. You have John Feliciano was brought in as a free agent this year. He can play center, he can play guard, he can even play tackle if you need him to. That's a nice one, as well as Matt Pryor. I think both those two give you experience behind the starting group. And then the other player I think the 49ers are going to keep is Nick Zakelj. Zakelj, a draft pick in 2022 of the 49ers, has the ability to play every position along the line of scrimmage. Although the 49ers really want to have him stay more on the inside at center and guard. Zakelj did play tackle in college, and he has that ability to kick outside if they need him to. So I think that's your 3-man backup crew is going to be Feliciano, Pryor, and Zakelj, with Feliciano and Zakelj really having that flexibility to play everywhere along the offensive line. Pryor a little bit more just stuck out at tackle. So that's the direction I'm going, though. I think the 49ers are going to like what they're seeing in Pryor. Feliciano is a really good football player as well, and Zakelj is somebody that's ready coming on. So 8 offensive linemen for the 49ers. I'll repeat it one more time. Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, Spencer Burford. You get your own wonder. Just remember, that's the killer bees, the 3 Bs right in the middle there: Banks, Brendel, and Burford. Colton McKivitz out at right tackle, Feliciano, Nick Zakelj, and Matt Pryor, making your 8-man offensive line for the 49ers active roster. Now let's go over the defensive side. On the defensive line, the 49ers typically have been carrying 10. Well, this year I have them taking only 9. And part of the reason is because of the addition of Javon Hargrave. Javon Hargrave over the last 4 seasons has played at least 660 snaps each season. That's a lot more than what the 49ers are normally able to get out of their interior defensive linemen. I think him, along with Eric Armstead, they give the 49ers 2 interior guys that will also be able to give them a lot of reps because of their versatility, which makes it so that they can take 1 less interior defensive lineman on their roster this season. So I have the 49ers with 9 defensive linemen. Your starting group: Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, Drake Jackson in year 2 stepping into that starting lineup, and then Kevin Givens, Clelin Ferrell, Javon Kinlaw, Kalia Davis, and Robert Beal, the rookie. That makes up your 9-man group. Like I said, Drake Jackson stepping into the starting lineup. I think the 49ers expect him to replace Samson Ebukam as a starting defensive end opposite of Nick Bosa. And then beyond that, you have Clelin Ferrell from the Raiders, the free agent acquisition, who can play on the outside. He'll be good, I think, as a rotational player on the edge, but he also has that ability to slide inside if you need him to. And I think that inside-outside versatility you get with a guy like Clelin Ferrell also allows you to keep 1 less interior defensive tackle. Now, the other thing is Kerry Hyder Jr., Austin Bryant. Kerry Hyder Jr. played really well for the 49ers last year. Austin Bryant, a free agent addition this year. I think they're going to be the odd man out due to the special teams ability of Robert Beal Jr. I think that ability to cover on punts and those types of things kind of allows him to take over the Jordan Willis role, get him onto the field in that way. And I think Hyder and Austin Bryant are both guys that the 49ers might try to keep on their practice squad. The 49ers, again, they have that history in recent years of bringing guys up and down depending on needs and their opponents. So I think both of those guys, along with T.Y. McGill and undrafted free agent Spencer Wege, all have a really good shot at still being around the 49ers, not just on their active roster. Because we focus on the 53, but remember, you also have the practice squad, and that practice squad is important because those guys can get called up at any time for a game depending on the needs of the team and injuries in other places. So once again, the defensive linemen, the 9 the 49ers are keeping: Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, Drake Jackson. Those are your starters. Javon Kinlaw, Kevin Givens in the middle, the backups, along with Clelin Farrell, Kalia Davis, second-year defensive lineman, and then Robert Beal Jr. Now let's slide back to linebacker, that second level. I think, the 49ers, I think their linebackers room is loaded. They have a lot of really good linebackers, and paring that down is going to be tough. I'm going to go with a very young room for the 49ers here. They're going to keep just 5. You're going to have Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Oren Burks. Those are your veteran groups, right? Fred Warner, one of the best linebackers in the game. Dre Greenlaw, really underrated, I think. I think a lot of 49er fans sleeping on just how good Dre Greenlaw really is. And Oren Burks is the guy who everybody looks at as a special teams ace. But in reality, he's also a really good linebacker, and he'll have that ability to fill in. And when the 49ers need to get out of their nickel and dime, need to go into their base, I think he can step in and be that third linebacker. We saw that last year a little bit as that goes on. Now to the backups. This is where it gets interesting because they have veteran Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles. They have Curtis Robinson. I don't think either one of them makes it to the regular season on the active roster. I think the 49ers are going to trade Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles late in camp, and I think we're going to see Curtis Robinson be one of those players that ends up on the practice squad originally because of that ability to bring him up. Robinson really more of a special teams ace anyway. He can kind of bounce back and forth between the practice squad and the active roster. I think that's the role that we'll see him in. So the last two guys I see making it are going to be Marcelino McCrary-Ball and rookie D. Winters. Jalen Graham, this is another one. They drafted him. I really like Jalen Graham. I think he's a really good, he shows the ability to be a really good coverage linebacker. We haven't seen him hit anything yet, so I'm not quite sure how he's going to fit when it comes to run fits and those types of things. We're going to get a good look at that probably about 4 days into training camp, but we'll see. If he doesn't make the roster, I see him landing on the practice squad as a possibility as well. So the 5 linebackers, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Oren Burks, those will be your starting 3 in a base. Marcelino McCrary-Ball, who was an undrafted free agent last year, has looked really good. I think he's going to be able to step up and take the roster spot along with D. Winters. Now, let's go back one more spot. Now we're out in the secondary. We're going to start on the edges. We're going to look at quarterback. Traveris Ward, Deommodore Lenoir, Isaiah Oliver. Those are your 3 starters. Ward and Lenoir on the outside, Isaiah Oliver in the slot. And they're going to be backed up by Samuel Womack, Darrell Luter Jr. And here's the one that I have for you that's a little bit of a surprise maybe. Undrafted rookie free agent, Deshaun Jamison out of Texas, making the active roster. I already said, like I mentioned, Ward and Lenoir, really solid starters on the outside. And then you look at Isaiah Oliver, and I think he's an upgrade in coverage over Jimmy Ward in that slot position. I think the 49ers from a coverage standpoint are much better with Isaiah Oliver this season than they were with Jimmy Ward last year. He's not too bad in the run game either. So I think the 49ers are in a really good spot right now with their starting 3. Oliver, I think, is a little bit of an upgrade from where they were in week 1 of last season when it was Samuel Womack. Now, not to get down on Samuel Womack because I think he's a really good player. I see him making this roster along with Darrell Luter Jr. as guys that can play on the outside. They also have that ability to come inside if they need to, so they give them that versatility of a couple different things. And then last but not least, Deshaun Jamison. And I know I'm taking a little bit of a shot at this one, but I really liked what I saw out of Jamison during OTAs and minicamp, especially as the weeks went on. Jamison was the guy who just kind of continued to progress. You kept seeing him step up to where during minicamp he was around the ball constantly, knocking the ball away. As defenders started to be able to use their hands more and become more aggressive with the wide receivers, Deshaun Jamison started to show up more and more around the ball. So that's a name that I'm looking forward to seeing how he plays during training camp, how he performs during the preseason games. But I'm going to say right now that I think Deshaun Jamison will make the 49ers 53-man active roster out of training camp. Now to the back end of the defense at safety. No surprises here. They're going to keep 4. Talanoa Hufanga, Tayshaun Gibson, those are your starters. George Odom, special teams ace, really good safety as well. Does a nice job when called upon in the secondary. But then you got your rookie Jair Brown. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this all mixes that up and plays. I think you're going to see Hufanga and Gibson play really well in the back end with them mixing in Jair Brown at times here and there. He's going to get some snaps. He's not going to be a starter necessarily, but you're going to see Jair Brown be a player for the 49ers here as a rookie, as long as he's able to kind of transition out of Penn State. The 49ers traded up to get him in the 3rd round, but I really like Jair Brown. I think we're going to see him on the field. I just don't think we're going to see him as a starter. I think he's going to be more think of what the 49ers did in 2021 with Talon and Hufanga, where they had their starters, Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tart, but they were bringing Hufanga onto the field quite a bit. I think that's what we're going to see this year with Jair Brown. And then we're going to wrap this whole thing up with the specialists, the kickers, the punter, the long snappers. There's no surprise at all here either. Mitch Wishnowsky, Tabor Pepper, there's your punter, that's your snapper, Tabor Pepper, one of the best snappers in the game. And then your new field goal kicker, the San Francisco 49ers rookie Jake Moody, taken in the third round. This guy has a cannon for a leg. It's just a matter of his accuracy, but he's been pretty good with that throughout training, out the off-season program from what the 4 practices that we as media members were able to see out of their practices. Just a booming leg. Looking forward to seeing what he looks like once they get into training camp. We'll see more of it there. He'll be in a battle. Originally it was St. Gonzalez, but don't worry. Jake Moody's going to be your starting kicker for the 49ers. He's got the leg to do it. Whether it's kicking, the field goals, his ability on kickoffs to get the ball high and deep, all those things, that should really, for as much time as we spend on Jake Moody on the field goal side, I think in some ways his ability to pin the opponents back deep because of his ability to get the ball up high and right around that goal line, that's going to help the 49ers defense with field position, and I think help the 49ers out overall. So there you have it. There is your 53-man 49ers roster as we get ready for training camp that's just right around the corner. Take it for what it's worth. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the names that I threw out. I'd love to hear the names that you expect to maybe surprise. If there's a surprise cut or two that you think, let me hear them. Just shout it out. And also, before you leave, please hit that like button. Once you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And then once you're done subscribing, turn on your notifications, because like I said, training camp's right around the corner. I will be in Santa Clara for every 49ers training camp practice. I will be in Las Vegas with the team for the practices against the Raiders. I'll be able to bring you all the latest information right here on Inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer. Thank you all so much for tuning in and watching. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk with you soon.